Hey, this is Paleac, and in this YouTube video, I'm going to do a quick little track breakdown of my song called Bleak that I just released recently. I think there's some pretty interesting stuff going on here regarding microtonality and harmony, as well as do some cool stuff regarding tempo automation and creating rhythm illusions and reset rhythms. So I think you'll probably find that interesting. So to begin with, we have the intro of the song, which is very, very simple. We just introduce this melody, and we have drums that are heavily filtered. So I have this drums group up here that has auto filters and utility gain automation that slowly opens up, and then just general other processing for mixing. And then we have this melody over here, which is in pigments, and I'm using this preset called Reverse Box, which has it sounds just like a music box. It's very like chimey. It sounds like this. Right? Very, very basic. Slowly I start to introduce more stuff. I also have this wind sound here, which is just straight up, just white noise being generated from operator and a auto filter that's just moving around. It's just wind, and then you just put a bunch of reverb and stuff on it, reverb and delays, and then you got wind really easily. And so the chimes themselves have this like kind of like cold feel to it, as well as the wind. I was trying to paint, I guess, this picture of winter because I wrote this song right around when winter started, and I get, you know, some pretty obnoxious seasonal depression and generally felt like shit, and felt like that this song really well captured the mood that I was in at the time. So what's more interesting beyond just the timbre of this melody here and the wind and stuff is also the tuning that I'm in. So you'll see here that the tuning is set to 26 equal divisions of an octave as opposed to 12. And if we open up this piano roll, our notes between C3 and C4, there are now 26 of them, which is, you know, kind of a fuck ton. It's kind of daunting, a little bit scary, right? But it's not that scary at all. Because there are a lot of tunings that are fully compatible with Western diatonic major scale harmony. So 26, you can also create a scale consisting of 5 large steps and 2 small steps, right? Which is the major scale. You know, it consists of 5 whole steps and 2 half steps. Well, if you could take any tuning and structure it in a way that it has 5 large steps and 2 small steps, then you could do that. So 26, for instance, if you have 5 large steps consisting of size 4, right? 5 times 4 is 20. And you have 2 small steps consisting of size 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Then you now have 20 plus 6 equals 26, right? Which means that while you can construct that major scale, the relative sizes of the intervals to each other is now different. It has a 4 against 3 ratio of how far apart the intervals are, which is now different from 12-tone equal temperament, where it's a 2 against 1 ratio because the whole tone is twice as large as the semitone. So the size of the small steps to the large steps are now becoming more similar because, you know, comparing 3 to 4, you know, 3 is much closer to 4 than 2 is closer to 1 in terms of like relative size, right? So I find that this sound starts to feel like a little bit subjectively like more cold, because it starts to lose the like tonality. When all of your intervals start to sound a little bit more alike, then you start to lose or weaken the sense of like the tonic or the root note, because, you know, if you think about like the whole tone scale, the whole tone scale has that really kind of odd, kind of free-falling, unstable feeling because every interval is the same distance apart, so there's no sense of tonality. You have nothing to like root to or no fixed point of reference. So I find that scales where the ratio of the small step to the large step starts to become more similar, I feel like starts to approach that kind of free-falling, weird, dreamy, dreamlike quality of the whole tone scale, right? So that's one way to think about it. That's at least how I think about it in terms of like qualia. So the feeling of the scale, while it's still a diatonic scale, we're in a C minor, I think, we're in a minor scale here, it just has a bit of a different flavor to it, right? So when we get to the drop over here, you'll see here that I have all these notes written down over here. These are all of our intervals for a minor scale. So you see we have C here, then you go up, you have C sharp, you have C double sharp or D double flat, and then you have D flat, and then you have D. So there's now more intervals between C and D. But you could still just recreate a minor scale by just entering a note at C, entering one at D, entering one at E flat, entering one at F, all the same exact notes that we have in 12-tone equal temperament, right? It's just that the relative size of these are a little bit different. So then you can, once you enter these notes in, you can, fold your entire scale. And then you can like shift and move up the scale like an octave up or whatever, and then just write within this folded scale. And then you're still writing within like a minor scale. It's the exact same stuff. There's just a little bit of a different flavor to it, right? So we have these sounds over here. These were generated using this rack I have over here, which is a formant glitch generator, where basically I will render out a recording of all the notes and chords and stuff, right? That's what I have here. I put it into a sampler, and then I have an arpeggiator arpeggiate through a sliced up version of the sampler. So it arpeggiates this giant stack of notes, and then it'll play these little notes, which are then going to be transposed, warped in different glitching modes, and I'll apply a formant filter. So when I listen to this, get a bunch of really, really cool sounds. And then so you can just record this out, and that's what I got over here, and I just like would sprinkle it throughout the song, right? So the drums are pretty simple. I just have this very basic kick snare pattern. Right, and then for percussion, I found this loop from I don't know where, just deep in my sample library. And it's compressed to shit. There's just a lot of compression. I put a little bit of erosion on it, which it has a very like kind of dirty lo-fi feeling to it. I wasn't really going for like a high fidelity track, more so just something like moody, vibey, whatever, right? And then I also will slowly introduce a pitched up version of the drums, right? And so I could use that as like sort of like fills. And for the most part, in this section of the song, it's just like this, right? So I have some risers coming over here. And I've explained how to make stuff like this, but pretty much you just have erosion, and then you have a bandpass filter, and then on some sort of sample, you compress the living shit out of it. You have the bandpass filter sweep upwards, and you compress that part afterwards, and then you apply a bunch of delays, and then you can get something cool like that. Now, I also have this little ear candy thing here. These are just like recorded out sound design sessions that I've had before, using, for the most part, like my formant generator that I've showed before. Stuff like that. And I just have that sprinkled out, uses like fills and stuff, right? So over here, I change up the melody a little bit, right? Instead of this like rising up thing, it now is lowered an octave, is a little bit different. Now here, I start to introduce some more microtonal notes that are not inside the major scale, so they're like chromatically altered, but we're in 26 tone equal temperament, so shit gets really weird, right? So this note here, you know, I found it by just like writing in a melody, and then, you know, when I was like, I didn't really like that, and I was like, I wonder if I can make it a little bit spicier by just nudging it. So I would just like nudge it down a little bit, right? And then I found that this interval here, which is like some sort of like neutral second, I suppose, sounded like relative to C, sounded really cool, and I thought it worked. And then over here we start to get into the rhythm illusions. So as a fill for this section here, what I do is I take the overall tempo and I automate it to go from 94 BPM all the way down to 46. I guess it should be 47 theoretically, because 47 is half of 94, right? So a few stuff happens there. So I automate the BPM to go all the way back down, and then it jumps back up, right? Back into double time. So lowers the half time, goes back into normal time. And then at the same time, while this is slowing down, I have these drum samples set to repitch. So as the tempo goes down, it pitches downwards, kind of like a vinyl, right? And then I also am reintroducing these double time drums I showed before. And these are double timed and also on repitch, so they're playing at an octave above, which means as you slow the tempo down, these octave above drums then become an octave below, meaning the original drum sample thing. So I'm sending these drums, our main drum loop, down below an octave at halftime, and I'm bringing in and introducing these double time drums to drop down into normal time. So there's this barbershop pull effect where one sound goes down and then another one from above comes back in, right? After this is done, I then have this lane here, which is playing halftime drums. So these drums slow down into halftime, become these drums, and then these drums slow down into normal time and become these drums, right? So you can hear this here. So you can still hear the leftover drums from before, so you can still follow the rhythm. So technically you could still be dancing in halftime at this point, or you can then dance in normal time. It starts to get a little bit wonky. Now with the melody, I start to embellish a little bit more with the microtonality aspects. So I'm straying a little bit more out of the scale, right? So these are our notes in the minor scale, right? Instead of playing those notes, I'm now chromatically moving upwards by 1/26th of an octave every single step, which gets a pretty alien and weird, but I find that it works really well with this kind of like moody, depressing vibe. Like the dissonance very well matches the coldness of the overall atmosphere and also the psychedelia of all the tempo automation, right? Time here. And I think it's pretty apparent what's going on here. I do the slowdown thing again as like a fill towards the end of this 8-bar, 16-bar phrase or whatever. And then in this section here, I'm just slowing down constantly. It's just constantly slowing down, and I'm constantly reintroducing new drums over on top. So this is called the Risset rhythm, where it's essentially a Shepard tone illusion with rhythm, right? So it constantly slows down, reintroduce new things. I'm also changing and bending what the automation curve is. So you get different sounds when, this is bent in a different way. So if it's like this, it sounds very, very different from this. At the same time, I'm bringing in more ear candy and stuff. Some of these have like auto filters on them. And the auto filter just has the LFO up at a rate of 16th notes, which, since it's 16th notes hooked to the grid, as this slows down, the rate also slows down. which emphasizes the fact that the tempo is slowing down, right? At the same time, I also have this sample here. I don't fully remember how I made this. I know it involves using erosion on a bass sound. And then what's pretty cool is we have these delay sends, right? And the delay sends are synced to the grid. And whenever the tempo jumps back up, the delay then also jumps back up, which repitches the sound. So you're going to hear, you know, the delay from this effect jump up an octave after every time the tempo resets. I think it's pretty obvious at this point what's going on. I'm just playing out this melody at a different octave, and I'm keeping the super slowed down halftime version of the drums, and for the most part the tempo stays the same, with the exception of the very end, right? I also reintroduce the wind sound. Make it real moody, depressing. So here's basically the ending of the song, and then I introduce this little kind of like interlude after section here. Where I'm playing in a totally different scale than before. So this was more so me kind of experimenting with the sound of creating different scales. So if I remember correctly, I think this is a 5 large step, 1 small step scale. So every single one of these notes is the same distance apart, which creates, you know, that like almost whole tone like feeling, except this is very, very close to a pentatonic scale, right? Like this is almost 5 notes exactly, except it falls just short of an octave. So we stack these intervals up, right? Because like 5 times 5 is 25, but we're in 26 tone equal temperament. So we have this tiny little baby step right here, right? Which you start to get really cool like psychoacoustic effects when you're playing notes really, really close together, right? So like over here, these two notes playing right after each other, especially if you have like a long release and they play together, they start to like tremolo with like a beating effect, which I think can sound really pretty. And so I'm just kind of exploring the scale and exploring different intervals. This type of scale has access to the sub minor third. The sub minor third is below a minor third, but you know, above a major second, which is this interval here. And the way that it's constructed is that almost every single interval has access to the sub minor third, right? Because there's so much symmetry. So and it just kind of loops and moves. I pan it a little bit using a binaural pan. The binaural pan, I have a video explaining how this works, but it's pretty convoluted, but I'm just using delays between the two speakers. The timing is being adjusted to emulate how there's a time difference between when sound hits both of your ears, right? That's pretty much that, and so it just like pans around and moves in interesting ways that you can't normally get from hard panning, and then it fades out to silence, and then the song ends. So I use a couple different delay sends. I have a normal delay send that I send stuff through. You know, that's just like, it has a little bit of a filter on it, so the sound gets filtered every single time it gets delayed. Now, I also have this stereo filter and swap delay, which I have a YouTube video on it, and the YouTube video is called something like The Power of Stereo Swapping or something. And essentially how this works is I have this EQ8 with a bunch of different band reject filters, and it's on left and right mode, right? And I have a spellbook moving around, and the spellbook is moving these filters around and also adjusting the relative Q of both left and right filters. And then this is passed with a parallel signal that is phase inverted. So the end result is that you end up getting bandpass filters that are now panning between the left and right speakers, and there's 4 of them moving around. So you have 4 bandpass filters moving all the way around, and then this also then goes into a swap delay. And so the swap delay will just take the signal, and then, you know, if there's like the bandpass filters are on the left, it's going to swap it to the right and then go back and forth and back and forth. And it sounds super, super cool. It adds a lot of width while also keeping the sounds all centered. Whereas like if you were to use something like ping pong delay, the ping pong delay would like send the majority of the signal to one side first, and then it would go to the other side, but then get quieter. So your entire signal would lean a little bit to the side. I find using swap delays and filtering the swap delays beforehand or doing some sort of stereo imaging beforehand to be a great way to get centered and dynamic width. Beyond the sends, I have a hip hop sub just doing very, very basic stuff, just playing different microtonal intervals. Right, nothing special. And then yeah, just a variety of just like random sounds and stuff. We have this guy here, which is some resampled. Yeah, it's like a resampled version of the melody that's like super stretched out on texture mode. And then I have an auto filter. The auto filter has an LFO on it, so it's wubbing. Right? And then I also have a shifter on it, and the shifter has a delay. So the shifter has a feedback of 30%. It's on 1/24th mode, and then it's also going up by a little bit over 3.5 semitones. So basically it'll play the sound, and then it'll get shifted upwards, and then it'll play the sound again, and then it'll get shifted upwards even more, and it'll play the sound again, and it's at a weird interval, so it sounds extra microtonal. Right? Other than that, we just have some like general mixing stuff. I put Bloom on like pretty much everything nowadays. I find Bloom to be a really, really good plugin for mixing. You can just like slap it on your group processing and then like try different presets, adjust the dry wet to different percentages. It's really good on your master. I have it on my master here. I like using the smiley curve preset, put it right before my limiter, and, you know, adjust the dry wet to your liking. And it generally just makes everything sound better, right? And, you know, it's like a dynamic compression EQ thing. It sounds pretty good. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole entire track. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I guess, yeah, the most interesting stuff is all the tempo automation stuff, and then I guess like the approach to microtonality. And I know microtonal is like kind of a scary word, but if you break it down into let's just create like a major or a minor scale, I'm certain you all can write something good in a major or minor scale. And so if you just create a major or minor scale in a different tuning, you could still write the same cool thing. It's just gonna have a different flavor to it. And then from there, then you could start tweaking things and trying to get more interesting intervals out of it. So just start with something simple, something that you know. Pick a subset of notes that sounds nice, play within those subsets, then start to modulate it. You can get really, really cool, interesting flavors, sounds that no one has ever made before. It's really cool. So yeah, that's pretty much the video. That's the song. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, you should go and, I don't know, like and repost it. Yeah.